For those of you who've been here before, welcome back. And for those of you new to it, you're more than welcome. This is number 6 in a series, and I'm Paul O'Brien. I'm the MD of calQrisk, and I've been doing these lunchtime learns in all the 6. And we'll go through today reporting. So this is the series, and I suppose usually we start these with a definition, and I struggle to find the definition of reporting or risk reporting. There are all sorts of stuff out there, but as far as I'm concerned, risk reports are shareable evidence of the effort and indication of the current status of all things risk related. And risk has its partner in compliance, because effectively good risk management compliance is the outcome of good risk management. So basically, with a risk-based approach to compliance, you're looking at satisfying the compliance requirements if you're managing the risk of failure to satisfy them. In any event, what we're looking at today is reporting, and there's no doubt that a picture paints 1,000 words. Modern reporting tools allow data to be sliced and diced in many different ways. The dashboard here is from our system, and it's typical of the kind of view that can be built from the data that's in the system. It is the system of managing risk that puts the data into the system in the first place. And that is what the earlier sessions were about. So the identification through the mitigation, the addition of the third parties, all of that is the data, or extracts the data, that allows you then, if you choose to turn it into risk reports. The system puts the data in place, and basically the reports are outputs. Outputs to inform decisions, to inform decision makers, to provide assurance of the two risk owners, and to verify that the controls we put in place are still effective, are effective initially, and are still effective. And the risk process is that the whole lot of it is continuously changing. So while a lot of the basic risks are fairly static, there will be parts of them that circumstance, context, events, and other inputs change. So thinking about reporting, first thing to think about is who is the report for? And I've sort of classified some of them here. Risk is managed at many levels in the organization. We think it's probably a pyramid with 5 levels. And down at the bottom level, there are an awful lot of risk owners, and they manage risk in detail, and they manage the detail of the risk. And when I say risk, there could be many risks in, for example, a department or a function. And so reports are warranted and basically need to be useful at all these levels, up to and including regulatory requirements. So some of those, as you probably know, are formatted, and they have to be done a certain way. The risk owners want to be able to share reports on the risks they have responsibility for, and these are fairly detailed reports. The senior team, usually comprised of function heads, and there might be some people on board committees, for example, and they look for some detail and some summary. So I'm saying some detail, moderate level of detail, and some summary. The report should point to the decisions required, resources needed, and ideally concerns identified. So your report isn't just a flat document. It needs to be, it either requires something, and that may be simple assurance, or it delivers something. So if you're looking for something through the reporting mechanism, make sure you ask. As you go up, the board governing body needs some reports and assurance that the detail is being managed. High level focus on the risk to the strategic objectives, and some horizon scanning about what's happening in risk terms in the sector, first of all, and in the wider business context. Now, we use a term called roll-up risk here, because the last thing you want to do is overload a board report with detail. So, for example, if you've got a function or a category, put the detail in there in summary. And the best way to do that is basically gather all the risks that are associated with that particular function or the objective, and put them together and consolidate a view, numerically consolidate a view if you choose to, in the report. So you're saying my cybersecurity is okay. All of our cybersecurity details are under control. That does it for cybersecurity. At different levels and way down, that is completely different because there will be an incredible amount of detail, risk making up that statement to the board. All reports, I put a note here in the bottom that all reports must stand up to reasonable scrutiny about completeness, context, and evidencing. And the notion here is this, that many reports will be challenged. You often find people want to have arguments about the values of a residual risk. That kind of stuff. It's distracting. And so if you can address that scrutiny, either with detail or with evidencing when challenged, and you're happy that your reports are doing that and giving you factual information, then that has to be accepted by whoever is looking at or accepting or assessing or questioning the report. So basically, completeness, make sure the context is right. So basically, you're dealing with what you've been asked to deal with, and the evidencing is available. Don't have to put it in there in the detail, but know that it's available to you. Reports, typical risk register, everybody's seen one, everybody has one. Some are 5x5, we've seen 3x3s, we've seen 4x4s, doesn't matter, whatever it is, you have a set of criteria, and a 5x5 set of criteria simply says what is the worst case scenario in terms of impact if this risk issue were to materialize, and what is the likelihood or frequency with which that might happen. Put a grid together, make sure you understand the criteria, and anybody who's doing a risk assessment at the level that the criteria apply to, then make sure that they're all singing off the same hymn sheet and looking at the same level of detail. That will develop the risk register. The other question is, what do the audience need or want to know? I'm going to say first, want to know. And each audience will, they'll have their own heads. But if you look at the levels, the risk owner will look for individual risk reports, they will definitely look for risk register, probably find that there are tasks associated with the risk, particularly if there's mitigation controls that need to be reinforced and there's mitigants missing. And they will probably have access to metrics around whatever they are managing the risk about. So whatever the objective is, they'll have metrics around their objective, they'll have metrics around the process, and the risk will be associated with failures of the process, whatever. So they'll have those metrics, and that should be reflected, or the impact of those should be reflected in the risk reporting at risk owner level. Manager, consolidated register of all the risks and key metrics. Some of this could be departmental, some of it could be function, some of it could be the whole organization. Depends on the type of nature of the organization. When you get up to the senior management team, key issues for them, a summary of the top current threats to the objective. So almost like your top 10 risks, but in the context of the objectives of the organization. And that's very important because the criteria need to be aligned with the objectives. So when you're making the report, it needs to be aligned with the strategic objectives of the organization, with the operational objectives of the organization, and that's what's being impacted. Now, if you don't have enough objectives or you don't have arrangements around managing the risk around one of the objectives, then you need to go back and talk to the SMT and say, look, we need to be managing this, or we need to be looking at this, or we need a specific objective about this. That could be do with, for example, upgrading systems. It could have to do with emerging risks. For those of you, well, we've all been through COVID, you will know the risk response that had happened when COVID started, and the things that organizations had to do. The boards and committees, again, the top risk concerns for the SMT and the summary of actions been taken to mitigate them. And again, the emerging risk commentary, that's typical of what boards are looking for. But do bear in mind, depending on the nature of the board, sometimes you now have skilled specialists on board, so they may ask some probing questions. So it's very useful and important also to be able to answer those questions with access to sufficient detail, either in the meeting or take it outside, if the individual is concerned enough to want to get into specific and very detailed detail. Regulators, usually it's confirmation of compliance that the regulators are looking for. Some of them will choose to audit. Some of them have standard formats for reporting, and they'll be looking for those standards formats in the process of their reporting or of your reporting to them. Some of them will choose to audit. Most of them will have built into their regulatory and legislative environments. They'll have the right to audit if they want to. But depending on what the focus is, obviously, tax compliance, that kind of thing, it's almost fully automated now, and the investigations start as soon as the thing is in compliance. So again, depends on the regulator and the extent to which they want to handle reports. Some regulators don't want reports. They want to know they exist. The risk reporting, so I put this here as what do they need to know? So first of all is want to know, and they should specify to whoever the presenter of the report is what they want. But now the question here is, what do they need to know? The risk reporting is a two-way street. There are things that the reporter needs from the reporting process. For example, they may be looking for resource. They might be looking for acknowledgement of the understanding of the issue. Sometimes that you may come, you don't have a solution, but you may get whoever you're reporting to say, okay, I understand the issue. I understand what you're trying to, I understand where you think the risk is. I understand what the issues might be. And the other thing you're looking for is buy-in. So the reporter might be looking for buy-in to a proposed action and meaningful feedback, whether it's to be, whether to ask for it or whether you're presenting or sending the report or receiving the report, is to acknowledge and understand the issues that, first of all, that you want to convey to the recipient of the report. So don't walk away saying, I should have said, or I should have said, or I could have said. When you're going in, know exactly what you need them to know. So it's not simply a pull process, it's a push process as well. And you're looking for that feedback that says, yeah, okay, this is good. So you're looking for basically just a summary of emerging risk. They need to know that. They need to know what you know. They need to act on any decisions you're asking for. And one of the things that is also useful for them to understand is your opinion. So if you have an opinion on something around risk, around some of the risks that you're confronting, about some of the things you keep repeating, about some of the things that they need to be aware of and they can help with, make sure they know that in the reporting cycle. Put notes down here. Some people report daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, annually, and some then is strategically, maybe once every 3 years, whenever that. But whatever it is, understand, whoever the audience is, that they get full and comprehensive reporting of risk position. And by risk, I include the governance risk and compliance triangle, if you like, in the reporting cycle. I've looked through some of the reports here. One of the things I'm looking at is an individual risk report. So at this level, you're looking at, okay, what does an individual need to know? So he needs to know what the additional mitigation options might be. He needs to know what tasks might be associated with the risk. It's kind of a consolidated overview of almost the thing that might turn up on the risk register and beyond. But this is a simple report that informs the individual risk owner. And then you're looking here at, I'm going to call this responding to challenge. So what you're looking at is just a graphic of residual values, and it's challenging things like control effectiveness, the inherent values, and a lack of movement. So sometimes risk can be very static. There's nothing happening in it. There are no additional mitigations. You do an assessment and it doesn't change. So people often talk about a lack of movement as an issue. Well, you know, what's happening with this? Risk doesn't have to be active. and for the most part, an assessed risk may not be active. But we also need to know that when it does become active, either improving as a result of an additional mitigation or disimproving as a result of the failure of a control or an incident, that you're tracking that and you can see that. And through a snapshot process, you can look at the comparison between registers for the same risk over time. This is, I referred to it earlier on, a rolled-up risk. So what you're looking at here is multiples of linked risks. So these are risks that are associated with the IT, for example. And what it does is it allows you to consolidate from making a report to an authority or a recipient that doesn't need the level of detail, but needs to know that the level of detail exists. And it's that assurance that is part of that key process in reporting. Context and framework is always an interesting report. So you're looking here at checking on the strategic plan elements. You're looking at checking on the framework, your strategic risk framework. And then it talks about things like appetite and capacity, risk tolerance, risk function. And in the detail of a functional risk position, you know where your IT department is, for example. You might know where a department in the organization is. You might know where a service provision within the organization is. So you're looking then also at the category risk position. And this kind of reporting does that. It's a graphic, so it shows you where you are around the extent of your framework. And I mentioned down here as well, 3 things that impact this: a risk criteria. So again, the criteria may be different. So for example, in terms of frequency, the criteria for an IT function on a big system will be different because they talk in terms of seconds, minutes, and hours. Whereas the criteria for something larger, like the health and safety stuff, they may be talking in terms of months and years. So the criteria, particularly on the frequency side, may differ from time to time. So depending on function and depending on department and the probability, usually generally on the likelihood that that variant happens. And the risk alignment is important because it links the objectives of the organization through to the framework and then through to the risk activity. And I mentioned earlier on the risk movement report. So if something is changing, get a report that gives you an indication of the change, be it on a monthly basis or whatever. You know, somebody will ask, what's changed since we last reported? Have an idea of what's changed. And if nothing has changed, happy to tell them nothing has changed. It's fine. But if you've got some movement, give an indication of why it's happened and why that movement happened. Some takeaways. I don't know how I'm doing on time. Reports are outcome of your risk management effort. Bear that in mind. The data you have is you then begin to report off it. And it's about the data. It's not necessarily about the report. Processes that generate the data need to be repeatable and logical. So, for example, anything you do needs to be logical and explicable in your risk management reporting. And that's in the data. So, for example, if you're gathering incidents, that needs to be associated with a risk, and you need to be able to classify it. And if you have something that's happened with some continuance, what you're beginning to find out is, I need to do something different here because this thing keeps happening, this failure keeps happening, this weakness keeps identifying itself, and you're gathering that data. Be clear about what is required by your audience, and basically make sure that you're going in and you've ask the what do you need question, ask the what do you want question regularly with the audience if you're delivering materials to them. Revisit the criteria and objectives as part of the annual review. Very important. Make sure that your alignment stays aligned, and make the alignment part of the strategic planning process. I think I'm more or less on time. One of the things that we have been asked to do is risk identify. So basically take the process of the 6 lunch and learns, and this, by the way, is the last one scheduled. So we've been asked to do an identification, from identification through the whole process, including the third-party input, through to reporting using our system to do a demo of it. Most of our things we don't refer to the system, but you'll see today there's a lot of examples coming from it. But we're looking to do something on the 31st of July, and we're going to call that a long lunch because there's no way I could do a demo this length in 15 minutes. So we'll probably go to 20 or 25 minutes. Questions, please, if there are any. Fiona.
Hi, Paul. Thanks for that. Yeah, there's one question there. Somebody's asking, is there a user manual for building reports and dashboard? So that's it. I suppose we've to answer that in two parts.
Yeah. Yes, in the system there are user manuals for reporting, but also the reports are auto-generated. So yeah, we have, I don't know how many. I think we looked at in the system. There's 32 reports, but there's also a report builder.
Yeah.
In the system, and many people now have their own report tools. And if you've got the data, you can feed it to the report. So yeah, as far as our system is concerned, you can actually link to an existing reporting tool if you choose to. That's a build.
Okay, and the dashboard, as you say, is fed from the information input as well.
Yeah, one of the features that might be interesting in the dashboard is the dashboard can be made visible. Basically, if you wanted a director or anybody to have access, they can get view-only rights to access the dashboard. What it tends to do is it reduces questions. It gives them access to the detail. If they want to go beyond the summary reports, they can get access to the detail if you choose to.
Yeah. So we have another question there. Somebody's asking, how about risks that aren't easy quantifiable, such as board renewal and reputational risk?
Yeah, one of the strangest one, the reputational risk is always an issue. We come across it all the time. How do you measure it? How do you protect against it? And the answer is usually communication and preparation, and communication and preparation. And yeah, difficult one. Sorry, the first part of the question is board reporting.
Board renewal.
Board renewal.
Mm-hmm.
The board renewal is in the governance risk set, and I suppose tenure is an issue, and some organizations very strictly write down their tenure expectations. So the chairman can only be there for so many years. The board members have to rotate off in rotation. Or state organization, for example, I was on the board of a state organization myself, and there was a very rigid rule that said you rotate out of it after you rotate off the board after 5 years, and then that renewal process happens with somebody else. It's refreshing the board, and some boards will have people on them, maybe even founders, that stay there forever. Yeah, the risk is that you don't have a succession planning process that includes a statement about board tenure. And most governance people would recommend that you have a statement about board tenure, which means there isn't a row at the end of a director's term. The director has, you point to the piece of paper, say, you've been here for 5 years, bye now, thanks for calling. And you decide as an organization how that works best for you. One of the things that we were talking about doing recently here is trying to put a matrix together about different types of boards. Like some boards it's tough for some boards because they might have representative directors who might come from Munster, or they might come somewhere else, and they're in there representing us, so that their commitment, their allegiance, and their reporting is back to their constituents rather than to the organization itself. So yeah, complex space, but tenure, the best way to deal with tenure is have it written down. These are the rules. This is how it happens. It's rotation, and live with the consequence of losing experience. Now, there are advisory boards that can hold on to that experience, and some charitable organizations do that. So, sorry, long-winded answer to what was probably quite a short question.
Okay, and just there's thank yous coming in, Paul. Very interesting. And people would welcome that longer presentation of the demonstration. So
of the demonstration. Okay, well, we've scheduled the 31st of July, but like all of these, they're recorded. So I know people are going on holidays. I heard Fiona's going on holidays. So look, it's always going to be like that. But we'll schedule it for the 31st. We'll put out the notice and the invitation then to the recording afterwards. And you know, you can even when you're sitting on the beach, you could, if you've got Wi-Fi connection, you could listen to it if you're not able to join it. But listen, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much to so many people who've come on, and the thanks and appreciation for what we've been trying to do. We will be back with varying and different topics probably in September, but we're going to have a break between now and then, other than the 31st of July when we do that demo. But thank you, and I hope you all have a wonderful, wonderful summer when it arrives. Came a little bit here this morning in Shannon. But
It's
again,
not in Limerick, I can tell you that much.
thank you all very much.
All right.